Water policy isn't academic. Basin policy isn't academic. It's about whether towns survive, whether they can thrive, whether they can actually grow, and whether they can supply the needs of Australia. And this is why water policy is so important, because water is life. Let's not pretend anything else. Water is life, and the Murray-Darling Plan dictates so much of that in regional Australia. When we have a town like Bourke that has lost 40% of their water supply over the last 10 years and 60% of their population, you see that the effect it has on communities. And while the President was here talking about the water I have on my table, this is water from Narrandera, from the tap. It's people from the city who don't understand. We'll call it Narrandera, but it is Narrandera, and this is what people can expect in the bush. That is pure tap water that we have there. And so this is why we have to go through and see what this. And what we need is action. We can talk about royal commissions, we can talk about this, we can talk about different policies, but you can't create that unless you are the government. This is why we are here today to call a committee of inquiry that can do something now, that can look into the actions of one of the largest water holders in the country, its actions and how it operates. Of course, there has been concern over the past year. There's been instances where they ceased to pump water in New South Wales because they admitted themselves that they weren't compliant with the New South Wales water metering standards. This is the largest water holder in New South Wales saying they can pump no more because they don't comply with the rules. This is the government's water holder saying that. If we're in these situations, we need to look at what happens. This is a water holder that has not used their allocation since they've been around. They never use their full allocation, but they continue to buy more water. And when you question how much water they have bought, it is not for publication. You have to dig deep and do a forensic dive to see how much they are spending it. You look at the WESA report, they're talking about 1.6, 1.7, up to $2 billion per year in buying water rights, when they haven't or aren't already using the water they have. Something is crook into a brook if you are spending billions to buy more water when you're not using the water you have. So I hear, and later on in this conversation we'll hear the people of South Australia, we want more water, we want more. They already have enough water to give more water, but we are buying more water off towns, we are buying more water off growers, we are buying more water off communities that need it. When I was out at Louth, out past Bourke, we saw a weir. Under the framework, they had to lower the weir to build a new one because you can have no more containment or no more capture under this legislation. So they wanted to spend $70 million to lower the water security of Louth. This is a place that had to they put out their own people on fire alerts because of the last 2 months of the last season they didn't have enough water to put out a house fire if it happened. They did not have enough water under their licence to put out a house fire. So they went around proactively trying to do this. But what we are doing here is having a look at this, because river health is so important. No one is saying that is not the case. But if you go down to Shepparton and you have the Goulburn, when we're looking at the river down there and the Broken River joined together, there is no ability to get the water licences they hold in that catchment out of that river because of the choke and other reasons. When you can't get the water out of where you own it, there is no point owning it. So downstream from there, South Australia, Victoria, all these areas can't get that environmental water flow benefit. And what we're seeing more and more is when there is environmental releases, they cause localised flooding in agricultural areas. The water isn't going to the environmental wetlands. It's not going to the Coorong that so many people hold as this. It is going on agricultural land because there is too much for the banks, too much for the river to hold. So that is why we're here today, calling an inquiry now. Not waiting for a government to change its mind and have a Royal Commission in the future, not doing anything that relies on the goodwill of the Labor government, calling on something that Parliament can do. And the important part of this is this commission would report back to the Parliament, not get a report to government that it sits on for years or forever and a day that never gets a reply. This would be an open policy where we can see what the concerns are and what they go forward. Since coming to government, $5.9 billion has come out of water infrastructure and gone into buybacks. $6 billion. But water infrastructure, the National Water Grid, is crying out for funding. The Wilcannia Weir is one that has been upgraded in Wonsound and Wilcannia, and another town that's running out of water. The state government upped there how much they would spend to upgrade the Wilcannia Weir, but the federal government was not able to match it. So the Wilcannia Weir is off the record. Once again, another town where water security will not happen because we can find $6 billion to take water out of communities, but we can't find $70 million to put water into communities. Yeah. That is the farce that we deal with as we go forward. And we're not just saying this government is wrong on water, state governments. And let's be honest here, state governments have so much to do in this plan, and they didn't do it. They aren't doing the works. They aren't doing the SDL works. They aren't doing the complementary measure works that are required under this plan. And when I spoke to a state water minister who signed the deal at the time, this is the quote I got. "I signed up for the benefits. I never thought I would have to do the work." That is the attitude here. It is, without someone in charge of water, it is always somebody else's problem. So we are not seeing the work done on river health. We are not seeing the work done on catchments. We are not seeing the work done on carp in the catchment. And let's face it, what would these rivers look like if we didn't have these introduced monsters tearing up the bottoms, getting rid of life, killing native species all throughout? And I know the communities are there. I know Victorian Water is very keen for a trial of carp eradication in Victoria, and I'd say Lake Brewster just down, it would be a great site for a trial in New South Wales. That's in the northern end of the Farrer electorate. But what we're talking about is doing what we have to do to put life back into regional Australia, not to harm the environment. And people will get up and say, oh, you know, stealing of water, all this, that, the other. The old joke that everyone upstream steals it, everyone downstream wastes it. That is not the case. This is a case of no one taking responsibility for the effective management of water throughout the chain. So this inquiry would only get down to how much is being spent, getting away from the not-for publications, how is the water being used, what are the successes. And that's the thing, because if you read the Northern Basin Toolkit report, you'll see some of the massive failures of the National Water Grid and funding, but you won't see many successes because the states aren't stepping up. And I don't want to put a whole lot of stuff where it's not needed. The federal have been okay in supplying the money. The states aren't doing the work. So this is the fact that the federal money shouldn't be buying water back. It should be making the states do this work. The Menindee Lakes, when we go out there, under the original plan, one of the man-made ones and one of the original ones were meant to be closed down. You're meant to deepen the rest of them, so that we don't have the evaporation problem. What is happening with the lining of channels? What is happening with the evaporation work that goes on? All of these things can be looked at, because what has happened year on year when the accrual of the chew water and the environmental water isn't being used, it is increasing the capacity of environmental water in dams, so the usable water is getting smaller. So if you don't use 20% in environmental water this year and it accrues in the dam, that is a higher percentage of that dam that is used for environmental water. Year on year it gets bigger, so much less water is available in our storage units for agricultural and community use. And I get that 70% of our water, 71% of our water is for environmental flows, but when it is taking over the catchments, so we might have a tonne of water, we just can't use it in communities. We can't get it down the rivers, we can't get it down the chokes, we can't get it, and when we do go, as I said, we are flooding towns. We had the triple bottom line test that was there. It had to be environmentally, it had to be economically and socially acceptable before we went on any buybacks. That has gone by the wayside. That has gone by the wayside. And you cannot say, I'll go back to Burke again. When we go through the 60% population drop, a sad stat when we talk about regionality, when we talk about our Indigenous people, no one has graduated from Burke High School with an ATAR in 8 years. In 8 years, no one has graduated from Burke High School with an ATAR because the population is falling and because the investment in the town is diminishing. That is the indictment. And you are not going to help Indigenous. You're not going to close the gap. You're not going to help Indigenous health. You're not going to, until the communities they live in and around are prosperous. It is a geographical isolation as much as it is a racial problem, and we have to fix these things. And we can't walk away from that. Our farmers already know they are trying to be more productive with the water they have, but when you're out there and things are tough and the government is in the market spending up to $2 billion a year in the market, it is very attractive to sell your water. I get that. I cannot blame you for trying to survive. But the government should not be buying the water. This is what we get down to. They should be spending this money on infrastructure to make sure the water we have is used better. That's right. Allow products that, like environmental uplift water is there. Why don't we have economic uplift water? If a town can be better and be more, why can't a town go to the Chew and say, I've got a chance to make my community better by doing this, and the Chew leases them water? Why are we buying water instead of short-term leases when we need it? There are many more things we can look back on what we do. And the latest thing in this term, another 130 gigalitre buyback. Once again, I've said on the record, we don't use the water we've got, but under this we've removed the guidelines to now another 130 gigalitre buyback in this term of government. We, in the Nationals and the Coalition Liberals, oppose all water buybacks in the basin. They have enough water. There should be no more buybacks until everyone does what they said they would do at the beginning, and you'll see you do not need them. Get rid of the carp, put the infrastructure in, build better storage, and we will be fine. As I'm choking, I'll have a drink of my Narendra water, not a thing. I am actually choking.
Don't.
Okay. Because when communities don't even have safe drinking water, how can they thrive? This is why we need to fund the water treatment works as part of the national water grid. That is why we need to put people back into the consideration of this. It is not just the environment, it is people. And it is accounting for all water. You can't divert the channel waters that used to flow into the Coorong to the ocean and then not account for them. You cannot have overland flow harvesting that when you are flooding, and you can't take the water even though you're flooding, that causes destruction of the banks, destruction of the rivers down low. If you take more water that actually mitigates some of that flooding, you are in breach of the Act. Right. This is ridiculous. So this is a bill that calls on an open inquiry into the aspect of the Commonwealth water only. It is not a free-for-all on who took what and who does what on the environment. It is narrow to the actions of government, but it is something we can do now by passing a bill that reports back to the parliament. It is a real thing. And if the government, if the Greens, if everyone believes that the Chew is doing the right thing, then they should welcome this scrutiny. If the Chew is doing the right thing, welcome the scrutiny and get the tick. I do not believe that the Chew is doing the right thing at the moment. I don't believe it's necessarily bad management. I don't think it's bad operation. I think the rules on which they operate are unfair to communities. They are unfair to farmers, and that is why we want to do this. A Royal Commission may take some time, may take 2 years, comes back to government, may look at all sorts of things. It may, depending on who the Royal Commissioner is, it may be very, very unsuccessful for the people that want it. But this will get to the bottom of the operations of the largest water holder in the basin. It will get to the operations of government. It will be done more quickly. It will be done more cost-effective to the people, and we'll get an answer that everyone can see. Because unlike my Narendra water, we want transparency in this basin. We want transparency in decisions, and we want transparency in water flows and allocation, because so much of Australia relies on it. When we're seeing national sovereignty and supply lines run out with oil right now, we will see the same with food if we don't protect these communities. We'll see the same right throughout. And so when we are putting foreign food on our foreign tables bought with our foreign cars because we can't use Australian water and we can't use Australian resources to grow them, this is where we go. So we want clear answers on environmental water, what has been done, what has been achieved, and what it has cost our communities. Because when they come here, when they tell the real stories they have, as I said, the storage has been overtaken by environmental water. The environmental water is flooding irrigation areas and farmlands, and communities are suffering. It is not good enough, and we are spending so much of our money covering for states that will not do the work, refuse to do the work, and keep coming back time and say, oh, more money for this, more money for that, and we don't have it anymore because we're spending on bloody water buybacks. Why does the government need more of something they have too much of? So we can make the environment blossom with the water we have, just better management. We can make the farmers more efficient with the water they've got by protecting and doing works that protect it. I urge the parliament to support this bill. It is so important for the regions. It is so important for our communities. And if we don't, we are turning our back on our farmers.